Hi everybody. So yeah, I was going to just do a response here to this weird video by these people called Fuck Hate. It basically involves children swearing a lot at a camera. I think for a start, the name Fuck Hate is an oxymoron. It reminds me a bit of a sort of skit they did on the Saturday Night Armistice back in 1995. Which I thought was quite funny. I think it aptly took the piss out of these sorts of things.
Let's kick violence in the face. That's the title of our campaign, and we've put it together with this information pack showing you all the different ways you can kick violence in the face.
Or if you feel very strongly about the matter, you can send off for your very own martial arts nunchaka with smash violence engraved on it.
They really do work as well. And we've also got some newsletters and some Let's Piss on Violence transfers that will be taken around schools with a big dog.
But skipping past the name of it, let's look at the campaign itself. I mean, the objection for me isn't children saying the word fuck. That doesn't particularly bother me. I think with my views on children swearing is, I think there's a big difference between someone saying, "Dad, my bike's fucked," or "Dad, go fuck yourself." The difference between the two, the latter is offensive and rude and disrespectful. The former isn't. That's fine. The former is just someone saying something's fucked. Yeah, they're not insulting anyone or attacking anyone. So I don't really have a problem myself with kids swearing as such. I understand there are still people in society who do, but I'm a bit more liberal on this, a bit more progressive. I don't really mind that. But yeah, like I say, if you actually say to your parents, "Go fuck yourself," you know, that's, to me, generally that's quite disrespectful, and it's not so much the word fuck itself, it's the intent behind it, the sort of aggression, and it's being used to add aggression to something. It's kind of disrespectful. So my objection to this campaign is nothing really to do with children saying the word fuck. It's also got nothing to do with girls saying the word fuck either. I think people really want that to be the problem. People who support this campaign want the objection to be, "Oh, little girls shouldn't swear." I don't think it's really got anything to do with girls, in my opinion. I don't think the rules should be different for little boys or little girls. What I don't like, though, is children being used as political mouthpieces. That I really don't like. I don't like anyone using children to project their political agenda. I find that very ethically questionable. It's just very layered in how wrong it is. Now, I mean, you could use children as examples in a political campaign. You could say, well, this political campaign would benefit children in such and such a way, or here's my child, he's a boy, he likes playing with Barbie dolls. Here's my daughter, she likes playing with trucks and He-Man figures or whatever else. And that's fine. Yeah, that's a good way of showing that children shouldn't be sort of forced into gender roles at a young age. I wouldn't consider that to be exploitative of children. But when you start getting these children to spout political views they couldn't possibly understand themselves, if you're getting children to spout these political views in some kind of campaign as though they're their own views, I find that very wrong. I find that quite unethical for someone to do that. Because these are obviously the views of the adults running this campaign. Now, some people have argued, well, you shouldn't just assume children, can't figure out basic political ideas themselves. Yeah, we shouldn't just assume children are stupid, or children can't understand politics at all. Okay, no, we shouldn't just assume that. It is possible some children are very bright, some children are quite sort of old for their age, I suppose is the saying. Some children understand things a bit better than certain people of their age group, other children, so they might be a bit ahead. They might have interest in things like politics. But the thing is, there's a difference between being a child with an interest in politics and being an adult who's had the time to form some actual opinions. to have the life experience, I think, is important. And once you've experienced life, you can then form opinions about these things, and those opinions will hopefully be a lot more informed. And so when people are saying, oh, I think, children can understand politics, I've asked people this, and no one has answered, do you think children should be allowed to vote? And no one has answered this, and I strongly suspect no one has answered this, because it kind of shows the silliness of their argument of it. If you want to say yes, children should be allowed to vote, well, I think you're probably going to start feeling a bit silly for saying that, aren't you? But if you say no, they're not allowed to vote, then you have to admit that you share my view that you don't think children can really fully understand political views enough to be able to seriously advocate for them and to be taken seriously when advocating for them. So that's my kind of objection to children being used as political mouthpieces, because I just don't think as a child, these children look like they're about 8 years old, maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, but certainly I think children, certainly pre-teen children, are not really going to understand politics well enough to really be able to firmly say this is the position I hold. I mean, look at religious evangelism. Look at, like, when we have these child evangelists. We've had child preachers like Marjoe Gardner or people like that. We all find that horrible usually, unless we're one of the people who's actually doing it, because we call that brainwashing, which isn't strictly true. That's actually not what brainwashing is. It's a common misconception, but we call it brainwashing, and what we mean by that is indoctrination. It's we see that as the sort of unethical moulding of a child's mind before they've had a chance to really reach the age of reason, a chance to really start being fully capable of making decisions themselves and forming conclusions about the world themselves. And I like to fall back on the sort of cliche we hear from humanists, which is, don't teach children what to think, teach them how to think. And I think, yeah, I get that. I think, show them how to look at evidence, show them how to reason, give them critical thinking exercises to work through. Don't tell them what the conclusion is they're supposed to reach, because then you're telling them what to think. Whereas if you give them exercises like in critical thinking, or you show them how to look at evidence, or you let them look at evidence and you allow them to learn, then you're showing them how to think. And that's something I support. Though, it is becoming a bit of a cliche, but it's a good one. Now, I mean, the other repulsive thing I find in this is children talking about rape. Now, in my opinion, shielding children from things like sexual abuse does include shielding them from sort of sexualised language, in my opinion. I think obviously actual physical sexual abuse is far worse. That is far worse, but I think describing graphic sexual acts and acts of sexual violence to children is wrong. I think it is wrong to do that. Some people have argued that we have to tell children what rape is in order to protect them from it. I don't know if I agree with that. I remember when I was a kid, the word was stranger. It was don't talk to strangers, don't go off with strangers, that was the word. When you get older, you realise the word stranger means paedophile. That's what it means. You realise that, but of course people want to shield you from that idea, so they use the word stranger. Don't go off with strangers, terrible things could happen to you. Now, you could describe what those terrible things are to a child, but I think in itself that would be doing a terrible thing. Now, you could by all means make an argument otherwise, but I think that is quite psychologically damaging to children to describe graphic sexual acts to them, which they may not even understand anyway at that stage, so I do think that's quite questionable. I think if you want to argue otherwise, I think you do actually need to make an argument for that. You can't just say, well, I don't agree. I think you do need to definitely explain why you think it's okay to describe graphic acts of sexual violence to children. Because if this little girl in this advert is yelling about rape, she either doesn't know what she's talking about, and she's just purely being used as a political mouthpiece by the adults who do understand what they're talking about, or someone's actually sat down with her and explained to her what rape is. They've sat down and explained to her what rape is and why it's bad, and don't like the idea of someone doing that with an 8-year-old, or I'm assuming she's about 8 years old. I find that very disturbing, and in my opinion, I think that is doing a lot more harm than good. So obviously people can disagree, but this isn't like the Christian fundamentalist argument of little girls shouldn't do this. I don't think... It's not the word fuck that is the problem here, and it's not the fact that little girls saying it. It's the fact that it's children spouting political views they can't possibly understand. I find it very unlikely that they actually understand them. And this is purely a mouthpiece for the adults running this campaign. What I would say is, I mean, there's been some arguing about whether they should be allowed to do this or not, or whether it should be legal or not. I don't know about that. That's a very complicated issue, discussing what children can and cannot be seen to be doing in media, what they are and are not allowed to do in media, what you are and are not allowed to ask children to do in front of a camera, and so on. That's a complicated issue with lots of layers of nuance to it. I don't really want to get into that myself, not yet anyway, but I'm not arguing here that what's been done is illegal or that it should be illegal, but I do find this specific incident quite very, very sort of immoral, or amoral perhaps. Let me know what you think of it. Goodbye.